Now, in in interview, okay. So again, going back to the interview, to the questionnaire, or to the problem, all you have to do is to analyze whether that problem can be answered by interview. Okay. So in quantitative, what is allowed is only in statistics, if possible, the respondent must not be less than 20, no, 40 rather, 40. Okay. Because if it's less than 40, it may not be the total representation of the population. That's why in your end, in statistics, it should be not less than 40. So you will be interviewing not less than 40. But in qualitative, maybe less, okay, because you are focusing to a group of people who can really answer. Okay. So what are you going to do? You can have an open-ended question, okay, or simply discuss to them, ask them, and then they will have different answers. So out of that answers, you're going to cluster it. Okay, what do you mean by this answer? Okay, maybe this answer is similar to that answer. Okay, and then later on, you're going to, you after clustering, you come up with a theme. What is the theme of this answer? Or it's like, what's the common ground of this answer? What's the word? Okay, so if that's the common answer to them, then in your and it is equivalent, the equivalent of that in your quantitative, it's the five. Okay, diba, you're going to formulate a statement in quanti. I'm talking of quanti, and they're going to rate whether it is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now in quali, since you did not formulate, it's they're the one who makes the answer. That common answer is what we call the five that people rated in a quantitative. So it is actually no different, only that the method used is that, you just craft a statement for them to rate, whereas in qualitative, um, it's the key informants. Okay, the key informants are the one who made an answer. So that is the main distinction. Okay, and I don't know which is easier for you. Okay, but in research, all of that is acceptable. Okay, so but most of the more impressive research now is the use of quantitative, especially if you use the Minitab or SPSS. Okay, because all you have to do upon after gathering all the data from the respondents, all you have to do is just input it in the Minitab, and I'm sure you know already how to use it because it's part of your exam. Okay, so it's easier. All you have to do is to enter all those answers, okay, in specific criteria, and you run you apply a different statistical treatment, and that's it. Okay, and as to the distinction and what kind of what statistical treatment should be used, okay, it could be ANOVA, a chi-square, or a weighted mean. That would really depend on the statistician, okay, on which um, statistical method you're going to employ, on basing on the different situation. Now, of course, when you say correlationship, it's important, okay? And that only applies if, for example, if the variable in problem number 2 and number 3, okay, um, if you want to know the relationship, okay, for example, between, if you have, um, what's the effect of, let us say, gender, and then gender to the performance of student in school. So if you think that gender and the performance has a relationship, you can apply what type of statistic that you're going to employ. Correlation. Okay. So in your problem number 4, where you will write there what's the relationship. or is there a significant relation between that variable, the gender, and the performance in school? Okay, so I hope I understood by this. Okay, because you know some some um, most of the or some there are many questions in the treatment of the problem where they state that what's the significant relationship, or is there a significant relations between um, the gender, for example, which is your statement, problem number two, and then and another problem statement is performance in school. If you can say that there may be a relationship, then you can put there in your problem number four a question on what's the or is there a significant relation between the gender and performance in school. Okay, so and the result of that would probably be those who are male may not be good in school. Okay, if you that's just an example of research. If you want to prove whether gender may be a significant relationship in the performance in school. Okay, so if you want to prove as well that perhaps those who are talented maybe female, then you can have a relationship that gender may have a significant relationship on the talent, on their own talent. Okay, now we go into the formulation of this statement, of this parameter or indicator. How are you going to make these parameters or indicators? Okay, in the school that we evaluated, okay, it's just like survey actually. All you have to do is there are instruments that we have to follow, like, and these instruments are actually found on on the criteria or indicator that it's indeed um performing well. Okay, for example, in school, what are the indicators that that school actually perform best? Okay, perhaps the facility. Okay, administration. What else? Faculty, curriculum, um, students. Um, what else? These are the things that will. There are many actually. There are 11 actually, and library. Okay, those are the indicators to prove a school. Okay, in evaluating a school. So what are you going to do in, for example, in vision and in administration? There must be vision and mission. Okay, and they what are you going to to find in the administration? There must be a university code. Okay, so you have to check if that university code is approved. So what are the instruments, what are the contents of that instrument under that administration, or under that administration, you have to indicate that there is a university code, okay, duly updated. So if there is a university code and not updated, then you will not give them a rate of 5. Okay, so similar also to a to a respondent scale, especially if they are stakeholders. Okay, they know whether that school actually has the university code. So all you have to do is if they think that they have that university code, they're going to rate, okay, 5. Or if there's a university code but not updated, then perhaps they will give 4. Okay, so that's how to evaluate. So you have to make an indicator out of that specific criteria. So if you are okay, it's very big because it's a school, and we are so many coming from different school as well in the entire Philippines. So when we evaluate that, we stay there for 3 days, more than 3 days. Okay. So I was assigned in yeah, administration. Okay. So all I have to do is to check if they have this university code, um, or if they have memos, if they have meetings, and what are the contents of this meeting. So all of that, if you think that those are standards of the school, okay, must be indicated. The point here is that when you make a survey questionnaire, it must indicate the entire aspect that you are evaluating. Okay, excuse me, provide. Excuse me, I'm having a class. Yeah. How that? Okay. Now, now in so that's the guidelines. Okay, when you make a survey questionnaire, or even an interview. Okay, you have to think of criteria that will really indicate, okay, indicate the the thing that you are evaluating. So you have to think of what are the things that do is its ness. What is the standard? Okay, what's the standard? And you have to put that in your um, survey questionnaire, or in an interview if it's qualitative. Okay, so think a bit now. It could be in a form of a statement. So in our evaluation, okay, when we evaluated that school, it's actually similar to what you're going to do. It's just you have to formulate a statement. Okay, so an affirmative statement, but in statistics, or in making a survey questionnaire, you have to, as well, to indicate or put negative statement. What's the purpose of putting a negative statement? So that there will be equality, or there's no bias, or it could be that to prevent from simply rating the correspondence, or the instrument uniformly. Okay, what does it mean? For example, if they want you to rate as 5, but they do not want to read anymore, especially if they are not paid, or they do not have anything to get from answering except the loss of time. So sometimes, if they think that I want to rate this one as 5, they will not read anymore each of those indicators. All they have to do is simply a lump sum of 5. Okay, 5 tanan. They're not going to read. Okay, to avoid that is to or to prove that they are reading it, or to prove that the instrument is answered genuinely or truthfully. All you have to do is to include as well a negative statement. Okay, and you will notice it because the answer may, if they read it, then it may be perhaps rate as 1. Okay, so if the answer is probably 5, all 5, probably that person that responded did not read. Okay, so what's the point here? The point here is that when you make that survey questionnaire, you have to get rid of the biases. Okay, so what are these biases? I mean, for example, if you want to interview the respondent, and you are so dressed well, and then perhaps what do you think is in their mind? Probably this person is educated, and we might get something out of this. So they might as well answer it based on what you want them to answer. Okay, to perhaps their answer would probably to impress the researcher. So to get rid of that biases, so that they will really answer based on what they perceive. You have to indicate that this will not be published. This is only purely academic purposes, or your name will not be included. Okay, so take note again, when we had this research, names will not be included. Okay, in an interview, you don't have to put their names. You have to put only the key informant number 1, key informant number 2, if it's quality. If it's quantity, then perhaps respondent 1, respondent 2, respondent 3, and so on and so forth. Names will not be added in the research. Okay, in fact, that instrument used will not be included even in appendix. Only a proof that you send a letter communication to the respondents, like to their head. Um, Now, in that is the um, how to make a indicator or an interview. Now, you have to make your statement simple. Use one subject and one predicate. Why? Because if the sentence is too long, it might, and there are two predicates, it may be interpreted um, as two questions. Okay, it's fallacious. Okay, for example, just an example, but it may be like this in your in your research. Are you so and so who stole the item? Okay, it's answerable by yes or no, right? It's in a form of one question, but if you dissect it, there are actually two questions. One is, are you so and so? Okay, they may answer yes or no. And another question is, did you stole or are you the one who stole that item? So that's another question. So the point here is that when you make a question, it should be only simple sentence. Okay, simple sentence, and you are not allowed to make um even double negative. Okay, like for example, it's not illegal to do this one. Okay, you remove that not illegal because it simply means legal. Otherwise, the respondents who are not actually educated, okay, cannot understand that one. They might be confused. Instead of this is what they expect in the answer, but the interpretation is wrong, then it may be a different one. Okay, so in fact, you are even allowed to translate it in a language known to the respondent. So if it's in English and they can't understand it, unless if they are so intelligent that they don't need to translate it to them. Okay, but if you are just ordinary, then perhaps translate it to their language. Now, so it's if it is crafted already in English, and you might as well translate that to Bisaya. Okay, okay. Why? Because this the respondents may not be able to understand it. Okay, so that's how to make um, an indicator or a parameter to prove a certain um, a problem to answer a problem. Okay. Now, in our case, since we do not experiment lives of the people, we can actually get a get a an exemption from the ethical board or a ethics committee, which is actually a requirement prior to the conduct of the study or gathering of data. Okay, so I hope you as well include that in your research method, that there is ethical consideration, that a process was followed, like asking permission from the ethics committee, and you are exempt. So before you can actually conduct a research to protect as well the faculty and the student, you have to get a permit first from the ethics committee. Okay, so you can ask that in class, who or how to communicate to the ethics committee. So you have to indicate that as well in your research method ethical consideration. Well, because I told you there are many cases where faculty are even dragged to certain cases because of a research where the the method employed is illegal. Okay, so I think I mentioned that in our class where the method of their experiment was illegal because they killed a species which is endangered, and it's against the law. Their experiment was all about something, a diet of a certain bird, but in the manner of doing it, their method, which is actually very wrong because there was no board, ethical committee, ethics committee at that time. So they continued, but they faced the criminal charges. I don't want that to happen to you, although this is just purely academic, and it will not, it may not be published, or it's intended, it's not biased. Okay, so that's why we have to get first the permission to protect yourself as well. Okay, so get that exemption from the committee, otherwise it will take a month for you to continue or conduct the study. Now in your chapter 4, okay, so it's the answer now to each problem. So what are you going to input there? Of course, graph. If you know how to use that SPSS, it's easier because it will just indicate as well as the legend. Okay, there's no need of actually computing. All you have to do is to only analyze what's the meaning of this highest and lowest. Okay, so you only explain the highest and the lowest. So it's easy because you will not be um you are not the one who will make actually the graph. It's the program. Okay, if you have it, you can download it in the internet. Okay, Minitab. Okay, and there are many tutorials on how to use it. It's easy actually. All you have to do is to indicate the different variables in, and input it in the Minitab. Okay, and then it will generate a graph. Okay, now in the results and discussion, again, what's the content, how to analyze it. I keep on repeating this one. In the results and discussion, it must be an answer to each problem. Okay, the only problem that you are not going to explain in the result and discussion is if the problem, or if the question in your statement of problem is what policy that may be recommended, or meaning it will be now your own um recommendation, which is not actually found in the result and discussion, because you will not be talking about results there. Okay, what you will perhaps be in, what will contain in your results and discussion is only the answer to the problems, but not to the policy that you want to impose based on the problems, or based on the things that you know already through research. Okay, but the data itself must be discussed, like probably one chapters one, ano, problems 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you have to put there the answer. Okay, so the answer to that are found in the significant numbers. What do you mean by significant numbers? These are highest in the graph and the lowest. Okay, so if it's highest, then you explain why is it that it's highest and why it's lowest. Okay, if the highest is not clear, or there's a thin um a thin line that distinguishes the first and the second, perhaps you can also include the second. Why it's the second? It's the second choice of the respondent. Okay, so include again the lowest. Okay, why is it so? What's the significant? Why is it that most of their answers is the lowest? Now, in answering as well, or making it an indicator, you have to know what are those things that can really answer, or perhaps give weight. Okay, so going back to the problems, let us say this is the criteria: administration, faculty. Okay, let's say school. I'm referring to school. Let us say um, in that aspect, this, if you think that the faculty may be the main criteria of determining the the quality of the school, you might as well give a different points. Okay, or you can actually make several questions to make it equal to others. If library is not so important, then you may perhaps have a less question on it, or less statement. Or if there are several statements, but you can actually give a different percentage. Okay, you can give a higher percentage to the faculty if you think that the faculty is the the main determining factor of the quality of the school. Okay, so you have to think if it's really necessary. Okay, or if it just equal, then perhaps you can have a an equal number, okay, an equal percentage. Okay, so it's simply a mathematical computation on how to arrive an answer. So in the answer, which is now in your result and discussion, so you have to again explain the different numbers. Okay, so never mind the neutral, that the 3 or the 5, it may not be so significant. Now, similar applies to the second problem. Still, you have to answer and make a graph, and why is it that this this graph is the highest, or this question is the highest and this one is the lowest. Okay, so that's how to make the results and discussion. Okay, so you have to discuss it. Do not simply add other words. All the contents of that must be coming from your own interpretation of the graph. Okay, now, so that should be, that's the content of your results and discussion. So when you make that result and discussion, all you have to do is to had a brainstorming. Okay, for your chapter 5, again, to repeat what I keep mentioning many times, the results, the result, the conclusion. Okay, there will be summary results, summary, conclusion, and recommendation. Okay, summary, you can get one paragraph from different answer to different problems, or yeah, one paragraph. Okay, so you will not be adding anything. All you have to do is to get a paragraph from the result and discussion, one paragraph or maybe few sentences. Then that will be the summary. Okay, and then conclusion. Then out of that, you come up with the conclusion on what can you say about the result. Okay, so probably one sentence or two sentences or three. It should not be long. Where can you find the long sentence there? It's in the recommendation. Why? Because your recommendation, although it will come and rooted from your observation on the problems, why is it nganong kana may ang answer? Why is it that his answer is like that? It's the lowest. So you can make recommendation. So you can write now on your own, maybe long, okay, but always be is also always based on the the data that you had. You cannot just simply write anything. Okay, so what can you write, which a topic which may be anything? You can write that in your um, chapter 2, which is review of related literature, but also be in relation to that. Okay, because you are still gathering on different information, you can add that as your review of related that, or it could be related studies if it's important, or it's connected, if the title is connected to your title. Okay, like for example, this article written by Dr. Belmonte, it's um says that it's the answer, his answer is contrary to what he said. Then all you have to do is to combine all those who are pro or similar findings to what you had, or what you had as your hypothesis that you want to prove. Okay, what you have already in mind, and we call it as hypothesis. Okay, and then those who are against, then you have to put it as well and make combine it as those who are against. So again, quote an article which is new, probably um, from the from the journals or from the writings of the professors. Okay, so I want to see again the a journal coming from the professors, if they had an article related to your topic. Why is it so? Because when you are going to publish it, that will not be published unless you quote certain article from any journal, or if you want to publish it in their journal, they are also willing if you quote an article that is also published in their journal already. Okay, so it's like scratching my back. I'll scratch your back. I'll publish your work if you quote our the authors the authors who already published in our journal. Okay, so you have my writings. I have so many articles already published. You can write that as well if you later on, if you want to publish it. Okay, so in fact right now I would like you to read an article. Okay, um anything in the article, and then make a comment in your in our in our Google Classroom. Okay, so you're done now with, while I'm going to end my recordings.